Good morning, everybody. It is delightful to have all of you with us and on time. We're going to get started right on time. Today, I'm Mark Friedman. I'm the project director for Person-Centered Planning for Nebraska. Most of you, many of you have been with us on other trainings. We're delighted to have you with us today. Today, we're going to be talking about supported decision-making as an alternative to guardianship. And we are just elated to have Michael Kendrick, who is an eminent scholar with us today, sharing his knowledge and experience with that. We also have Mary Phillips. Let me ask one of my technical backup people, if somebody would make Mary a co-host so we can bring her on screen later when we get to that. Before we begin, a few backup pieces that I want to cover with you. Most of you are familiar with Zoom, but anybody who isn't, there's a view button up in the upper right-hand side. You can toggle, that will bring you up different, seeing the PowerPoint and people on screen, some people find helpful. Secondly, we have closed caption running, but you have to activate that. If you want to see that, there is the live transcript button down at the bottom of your screen. You have to click that. That's a toggle button. You can turn that on and off. Also, we want to highlight that to you. Many of you run meetings. It is a way to not only do accessibility, but improve the reading comprehension for people who have difficulty hearing or understanding, even just general comprehension. Secondly, we have live translation, where we're fortunate to have Sam DuBois from Ecuador, who is an excellent translator. And anybody who wants to hear this in Spanish simply has to hit the interpretation down at the bottom of your menu. Sometimes you have to hit the more button to bring up the interpretation, and you'll be able to hear the Spanish in your screen. Anybody wants to test that, you can go back and forth. Additionally, we're asking you to share your screen, to have your camera on. This helps us to meet you, to get to know you. It helps us to be better trainers. And so we would appreciate if you'd be live on screen so people can all get to know each other. A few other items. This is sponsored by the Nebraska Council of Developmental Disabilities and the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, that we appreciate their funding. We have takes a village. We have a large training team. Today you have myself and as backup, David Weatherow, Mary Angus, and Formeller, and Jennifer James. Many of you will see and hear in some of the discussion breakout rooms that we'll be doing. So I want to give you a little background just for a moment on the department's steps that it's taking to implement person-centered planning. This is the question that we are most often asked, and we're excited to be able to report to you that the department's made a number of very significant steps in what is called the department's business plan, which is a commitment to follow through what they're going to do. They've taken several steps, and I want to share them with you. We'll be having more as this goes along into 2022. Firstly, they've adopted a charting the life course as a model for person-centered planning, and this is a big step. Charting the life course is one of the newer models of person-centered planning. It was developed by Shelley, who has done a website, a webinar for us earlier in the year, and we'd highly recommend that for you if you want to begin to understand what it is. They will be contracting with the is a very difficult name to pronounce, but it's the National Association of State Developmental Disability Directors Services. And it is an organization that's like Tony Green. All of the directors of developmental disabilities in all the states belong to it. And so they'll be providing training. So there'll be quite a bit of extensive training will be available to you, from service coordinators to families, people with disabilities in 2022 on charting the life course specifically. And then they're going to create a stakeholders group that I would recommend as many of you can participate as are able to. And finally, redesigning the individual support plan, which really will be a big step. So with that, I just leave you. You'll we'll be talking more about that. You'll be hearing more from the department division. I just wanted to share that with you because we're really excited. That really gets to the sustainability, the department's commitment. And what people always ask is, is this going to really come about? Is this going to be real here? So today, I'm just elated to have my friend, my colleague of many years, Michael Kendrick, who is a preeminent scholar in supported decision-making and eminent writer, an international consultant. He travels the world in many countries, not an exaggeration, to provide training in a variety of things. He's an excellent writer and has written many articles about services in general. He's the former director of supported decision making for the Center for Public Representation, and has stepped down recently to pursue other options. And we're really pleased that he's with us, and we're really fortunate to have Michael be with us. With that, Michael, you're on. Michael's going to bring up his screen and share his PowerPoint. And there we go. You're on, Michael.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. We're going to look at the concept of supported decision-making. And it's a term many people have heard, but it's sometimes good to put some flesh on the bones. And I think what I'd like to do today is to give you a little bit of an orientation to what it is and some of the implications of supported decision-making. And let me just, supported decision-making is a form of support to people that can prove to be an alternative to guardianship. And in this sense, guardianship is a form of substituted decision-making where someone makes a decision on behalf of a person, but the person themselves isn't making that decision. So supported decision-making is built on the premise that people can make their own decisions if the right support is present for them. And so to do that, to practice that, the person essentially selects people to be their own supporter, and it could be different people support them with different decisions. So there isn't really what you might call an all-purpose supporter, but rather a supporter that seems like the right person to give support to the person at the time. And just a second here, I'm having trouble moving the slide.
Michael, try the arrow buttons on your keyboard.
Yeah. I'm having difficulty.
Tap your mouse cursor into the onto the PowerPoint just one time. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Well, Robert Dinnerstein many years ago wrote a definition of supported decision-making that still holds up quite well. He says it's a series of relationships, practices, arrangements, and agreements of more or less formality and intensity designed to assist an individual with a disability to make and communicate to others decisions about the individual's life. Now, in his definition, he was talking about it applying to people with disabilities, but it can also apply to, for instance, people with a variety of disabilities. So it is a technique, if you like, or an approach that would benefit potentially a lot of individuals or groups. Now, in essence, most people will actually create their own sources of personal support informally in our everyday life. We turn to people for assistance with decisions, and we may turn to people that we know might know more about the particular question. For instance, there's some people you'd like to talk to about your car who actually know something about cars, so you would turn to someone who's knowledgeable, like a mechanic. But on another decision, you might essentially turn to a different supporter. So it is with supported decision-making that people do it anyways in everyday life. We just don't think, we don't have a name for it, but we're getting support with our decisions when we do that. Now, targeted or formal supported decision-making means that there may be people that do have personal limitations such as having various disabilities, that may appreciate support with their decisions and can, if you like, collaborate with others to build a circle of people that would be their supporters with their decision making. As the support is in place, it has a protective influence on people's life, because if you're getting good support, you're probably going to make better decisions, and you get input you might not otherwise get with particular decisions. And the advantage of that isn't that people are compelling you to make some kind of decision, but rather that when it comes to making the decision, you're better prepared for that decision. And now guardianship, it means that someone else is making the decision on your behalf. You're not making it. And so this is the impact of guardianship is to take away people's ability to make their own decisions, whereas something like supported decision making is intentionally wanting to keep the person as the decision maker in their own life. And people under guardianship, this was a study done and called the National Core Indicators Project, they're less likely to live in their own homes or apartments or be involved in making choices about their lives, have their rights respected, have community jobs or service plans with this goal, or have friends. So these are very significant quality of life elements. So when you're deprived of them, your life is, if you like, more impoverished. And so guardianship has that effect on people. And that's why there's interest in, is there another way to do this that doesn't have those negative effects? So supported decision-making is practiced by all of us in our everyday life. And in some cases, we do it intentionally. In other cases, it just seems to be a natural way for us to behave. And so in this sense, supported decision-making is a natural support. It's a way in which people quite naturally turn to other people they trust on important matters to confer with them about a decision that they're trying to make. And in this case, we can turn to individuals. In some case, we may draw a number of people into a discussion about a particular decision. And so the practice of supported decision-making largely follows that kind of a pattern. And so it is a natural support, and it is a way in which we all benefit. And so the intention within supported decision-making is to ensure that vulnerable persons also get the benefit of supported decision-making. And when that support is absent, it may be necessary to put it in intentionally in place. For instance, many people may not have supporters to turn to in their life, and so they have to be recruited and put into place. And that way, people then have the benefit of people supporting them with their decision-making that they wouldn't otherwise have. And so in that way, much like you might create an intentional support circle, in supported decision-making, you create a circle of supporters to help you with decisions. And of course, the person themselves is very instrumental in picking the people they trust to be their supporters. And so in that way, they are shaping a pattern of support with people that they know they can trust. Now, in many places in the US these days, there are specific jurisdictions that have state statutes that essentially approve of the idea of supported decision-making. But you don't really need a statute to do it. It's not illegal in the United States or most countries to talk to people you trust about a decision. So you don't need a statute to do that. But it has significance when you do have statutes because it makes it clear there's alternatives to guardianship. Now, the practice of supported decision-making has been going on for some time now. And it's directed to not only persons with disabilities, but the elderly, persons with mental health needs, and children and youth as well. So you could practice supported decision-making with various groups that have distinct vulnerabilities. In Massachusetts, the state where I currently live, they already have had seven supported decision-making projects, as well as we've assisted with projects in other states. In Massachusetts, we don't have a statute, but we're very close to getting one. It's in third reading at the present. Now, the practice of supported decision-making can be combined with other kinds of legal supports that are available to many people, such as healthcare proxies, durable power of attorney, representative payee arrangements, and so on. So people may have other things in place as well that are intended to support them with their decision-making or their various requirements in living. And it can also be used in conjunction with, for instance, other intentional personal networks like a support circle or citizen advocacy or self-advocacy or mentorship or peer support. In fact, in Georgia, support decision-making has been initiated as part of the citizen advocacy effort there that's been underway for 4 decades. So they're seeing the benefit of supported decision-making linking to citizen advocacy. Now, supported decision-making is developmental in the sense that, like all things we do, if we get lots of practice with doing them, we get better at them. So supported decision-making, you may start with not being very good with making decisions, but over time become more proficient with doing it. So in this sense, the effect of practicing it means that you have more capacity down the road than you might have when you started. So in that way, as you practice anything, you can get better at it, including decision-making. So in that sense, people may become better decision makers over time by practicing supported decision-making. Now, the practice of supported decision-making has been introduced, for instance, in school settings in relationship to the transition from one level of your education to another. So the nature of supported decision-making is it can be fostered or nurtured in a number of different contexts. And in all of the United States at the moment in territories, there are people practicing supported decision-making. You may not know about it because it isn't something people would necessarily run across, but for people in the networks interested in this, there's quite a bit of interest in supported decision-making. And just last night, I was on a Zoom call with Australia with a group there that's been involved with supported decision-making. So it's important to understand this is happening in many countries as well. And it was given great momentum by Article 12 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which spoke in favor of supported decision-making. And consequently, a lot of countries have picked it up, and many countries that surprised me that what they're doing in terms of supported decision-making. Now, everyone has the quote from Cassandra Clare, everyone has choices to make. No one has the right to take those choices away from us, not even out of love. And this is very important sentiment, but it is the reality that in the United States that can be taken away from people when they are placed under guardianship. And so it's important to not think that people necessarily are going to have their rights respected. And guardianship, of course, takes all rights away and turns them over to a substituted decision maker. So the person themselves may have very little say in that. And so preserving the right of people to make their own decisions is a kind of an important premise of the idea of supported decision-making. Most of us aren't going to always make good decisions, but we like to have the right to make our own decisions. And similarly, it doesn't mean that even if you do practice supported decision-making, that it doesn't mean you will always make good decisions. It just means you have support to make decisions, and will do better with that support. Another implication of this quote too is that the people that have had their rights taken away from them by being placed under guardianship can get those rights back. And this is called the restoration of rights, and it involves returning to court because the courts oversee the installation of guardianship. That installation of guardianship, putting it in place, can be undone. You can go back and try to make the case with the court that that it isn't helpful to the person. And I have been part of that process on occasion, where we have gone to court. The person had been under guardianship, and the case is made that the guardianship isn't helpful anymore, and it's time to restore the person's rights because they now have the support they need to make the decisions. So this may not be known to people that you can return to court and get guardianships overturned, but it is increasingly more common, though it isn't exactly that everyone would know that. Now, just going back to the nature of choice and decision-making, there's a quote here, but until a person can say deeply and honestly, I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, that person cannot say, I choose otherwise. If you like, you can think of our lives as a series of choices. And we make good choices, we may make not so good choices, but we do have the power to make our choices, the authority to make our choices. And as you can tell, just because you have the authority to make your choices doesn't mean that you always make good ones, but no one questions your right, if you like, to be in charge of your own decision-making. So it's a very intrinsic part of people's personal power, authority, self-image, and others to think of themselves as captain of their own ship or the person that's steering their life. And with that authority to do that comes the responsibilities of choice as well, to live with the consequences of choices. And so it is not something that's trivial at all, because one can do great good with one's decisions, but we can also do great harm with our decisions. But we have the freedom to be the person that's making our decisions. So with decision-making authority in that way comes decision-making responsibility and learning a great deal about responsibility over a lifetime of choices. Okay, sec here. There we are. I just wanted to say something about personal autonomy, because autonomy is linked to this kind of authority. And autonomy is the personal rule of the self that is free from both controlling interferences by others and from personal limitations that prevent a meaningful choice. Autonomous individuals act intentionally with understanding and without controlling influences. So autonomy is a very important thing to consider, because we live with it in our lives and we may take it for granted, but we are the decision makers in our life. We shape our lives every day in different ways, and we're doing it ourselves. In other words, we are not doing it under the direction of others. though there are instances where we will receive direction from others, but we have the autonomy to cooperate with that or not cooperate with suggestions or recommendations and guidance from others. So personal autonomy can be cultivated in people. We all can strengthen our autonomy. And in fact, in many things, people aren't necessarily all that strong in their autonomy, but in other aspects of their life, they are. So personal autonomy isn't a fixed part of who we are. It's something that can be grown and developed and evolved over time. So decision-making and personal decision-making interacts with personal autonomy considerably because you're exercising that autonomy when you make decisions. And even when you make poor decisions, you're exercising that autonomy because it is you making the decision and not someone else making the decision for you. And of course, in situations like guardianship, guardians often actually encourage the person they're overseeing to make many decisions, but they have the authority to overrule the individual's decision-making. And so in that way, the guardian has the final word, whereas for ordinary citizens in the United States, unless you're under guardianship, you have the authority to make those decisions, even the authority to disagree with people about many different kinds of things. So personal autonomy and the exercise of it is, if you think about it this way, is a right of Americans to be themselves, to be able to be sit in the driver's seat of their own life. Okay. I think I'll just pause there. Oh, here we are. So just thinking about autonomy and responsibility in a person's life, you can just look in the way we live, just for examples of it. For instance, making the breakfast that suits you today, or deciding to put off a task until later, or deciding what to wear, or recognizing that you're unhappy and deciding to do something about it, or deciding to not answer a question, or apologizing because it is the appropriate thing to do, or cooperating with others voluntarily, deciding to try something new, and asserting your own ideas, and carrying out a task as expected. Even simple things like deciding when to go to bed or get up in the morning, changing one's mind, able to be alone and choosing to do so, keeping a promise, fulfilling a duty, deciding for or against the wishes of others, finishing a task that needed completion, keeping on time, putting things away, refusing an offer, selecting from a range of choices. You can see in these daily things that we do that we're exercising personal autonomy. And we may take it for granted that we have that, but it is quite a precious gift if that is taken away from you and turned over to someone else to make your decisions. So it's important to value and appreciate the importance of personal autonomy and what it brings us in life. Okay, I think I'll just stop there.
We're going to have our breakout room now. And many of you have been in breakout rooms, but firstly, thank you, Michael, for the beginning steps of that. And also a little bit later, we're going to hear from Mary Phillips, who is the chairperson of the ARC of Nebraska. We're excited to have her with us. So now we're going to breakout room, which many of you done. The question that Michael is posing is, why is it important to you that you are the key decision maker in your own life? Okay, I think we have everybody back here with us. So, Michael, you're on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. And my apologies for the delay here. Personal autonomy is an important capacity that can be developed in people, in all of us. And so autonomy isn't a fixed aspect of who we are. It's a variable in the sense that we can lose autonomy and we can build autonomy. For instance, a good example of this is you can become more autonomous with computers if you want to become and develop the right capacity. So just even our little moment here is an illustration of how one can develop yourself so that you can become more autonomous over time. And it isn't that people are or are not autonomous. They are autonomous to a degree and in different aspects of life. So it's not that you're either autonomous or you're not, but you are autonomous to some degree or another in all aspects of life. And that autonomy may not be something that is stable. You can lose autonomy. And it can be variable depending on which aspect of life you're using your autonomy in. And also the strengthening of our autonomy can develop other capacities. For instance, we can develop the capacity to support others and to support ourselves. We can develop the autonomy that would give us greater confidence, our ability to resist certain kinds of conduct and so on. So it's important to see autonomy as not you either have it or you don't, but rather that it's a variable that you can use to strengthen your ability to do things in life, become, if you like, more self-sufficient, more autonomous, as may be the case. And it's also very important that with autonomy would come other sorts of benefits, one of which would be skills that you can develop so that you can become more autonomous. And we can learn skills, and it does change our lives. And becoming more autonomous could create a variety of social roles that we don't have at the moment because we are reliant on others. Also, there's dignity in autonomy. It gives people a sense of accomplishment, of pride in their conduct, and sense of achievement. And these aren't trivial outcomes. These are very important things that we have a sense of achievement, for instance, in life. And also that we can express ourselves, that we can, if you like, show who we are and have influence in our life as we move along. So autonomy can be gradually built into how we live. So it's something that you could work on for the rest of your life if you wanted, because there's many, many ways to strengthen one's personal autonomy simply by deciding, for instance, that in X and Y, I would like to be more autonomous. For instance, if you're very reliant or dependent on others, you might say, well, I'd like to get some independence from people I'm currently too reliant on. And you can set about cultivating that autonomy in yourself. And why this is so fundamental is how we think about autonomy is, as I said earlier, it is developmental. You can think of autonomy as something that can be grown and strengthened. And even if you're weak in terms of your autonomy in some parts of your life, it's quite common that people can change their capacities to become more self-reliant or more autonomous in whatever it is that they are setting as a purpose for themselves. in that exercise. Now, let's see, having trouble moving to the next slide here.
Mark's controlling it.
Okay. Thanks. So in terms of intentionally cultivating autonomy, you can identify instances where things are done for people that they could decide and do for themselves. Now, this goes well beyond just supported decision-making. It's really a developmental question for many people's lives. How could you become more self-sufficient? How could you become more self-reliant? How could you act on your own? And supported decision-making is, of course, an expression of that, because you're saying, could I become better at decision-making? Could I become more proficient and more self-reliant on myself to make decisions and so on, rather than looking to others to make the decision for me? And many of you have heard of the concept of learned helplessness. And learned helplessness doesn't mean that people don't have the capacity to do things, is that they've learned to be helpless in terms of being able to act on their own behalf. And of course, if you can learn helplessness, you can unlearn it. And so in a developmental sense, you can, if you like, strengthen yourself by helping yourself to become more self-sufficient. Now, some of this is done in terms of raising expectations for yourself or in the minds of others about you, taking up demands and performing well on them, becoming more personally responsible, concurrent, which is what is normative for most people. In other words, that human beings can stretch their capacities from where they currently are to a little bit further down the road with their capacities. Now, you can't do this overnight, but over time, it's quite possible for people to develop many capacities that they formerly may have thought, oh, well, I could never do that. But then they end up seeing that they could. But we can't typically do it all by ourselves. So the idea of supports are very important too, that what support do I need to expand my autonomy? What assistance what type of assistance do I need? And where do I get it? And how do I utilize it? And how do I strengthen my capacities over time? So by practicing autonomy, the person does, of course, become accustomed to exercising autonomy and responsibility. And if you learn this when you're very young, you have a great sense of self-direction. And that's a very good start in life in terms of being able to be autonomous. Okay, Mark, the next slide. So if you're trying to assist people with autonomy, you can help people get clear expectations that they are the decision maker in their own life, and that they begin to explore what they can do with their decisions and decision making. And it is interesting that people, when you get practice with decision making, decisions aren't so stressful. But when you're not used to making decisions or having others make the decision for you, then making decisions itself is stressful, and it is a good thing that you can make it less stressful by just strengthening your capacities. And there is many roles and opportunities for exercising autonomy in the community and in our lives at home. And small things in terms of autonomy may be very strengthening of people's self-image. For instance, if you've never cooked for yourself and you cook a few things for yourself, you've made a big step towards being more self-sufficient with cooking. And these simple things alert us to or heighten our consciousness about the fact that we can reshape ourselves so that we can have more personal autonomy. And of course, if that gets noticed by other people, they can positively reinforce that by noticing it and highlighting it and praising the person for what they're now able to do and so on. And you can avoid practices that make you more dependent on others than is necessary. And so changing the patterns of our dependency on others can bring us to a stronger personal sense of autonomy and have the capacity to do things that we probably previously didn't allow ourselves to think we could become competent at X or Y. And so being dependent on others isn't a fixed state. It's something that can be changed through our own actions. So if you're in the business of supporting people to do this, and many of you are in those roles, you can actually shape the outlook that people are operating from in terms of what their capacities are, or what the capacity are of the person they're trying to support. So all of this is mindsets that can shift in the direction of people being able to be captain of their own ship, if you want to use that as a metaphor. I think this is, I don't think do I have another slide marked there? No, I didn't think so. Okay, just to put the slides away for a moment here. Mark, just where am I in terms of time?
You're doing great, and you're doing fine, Dave. Like,
yeah. Okay. Well, I thought I was supposed to be done by 11.
it is 11 o'clock.
Good. That was very autonomous of me.
Thank you, Michael, and I must commend you for increasing one's capacities and decision making around computer technology. It really makes the point. We could all laugh together. Thank you. We'll hear more from Michael. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a 15-minute break to 11:15 on Nebraska time. I know some of the Western piece 15 minutes after. And when we come back, we're also going to hear from Mary Phillips, who is the chairperson of the ARC of Nebraska. She's a former special education teacher and a special education administrator, and we'll be hearing from her delightfully shortly. So with that, we're going to hear wonderful music from Ecuador, from South America, from Ann Formiller, who's one of our co-hosts. That's just very, very peaceful. And please don't, you're welcome to shut off your camera, but please don't shut off Zoom so we can get you back in the same rooms that we have. So with that, we will see you all and hear music, and we'll be back in 15 minutes after. See you soon, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We are delighted to have you with us. I hope you had as relaxing experience from the wonderful music. Thank you, Anne, for bringing that to us from South America. We always deeply appreciate that. We're about to hear from Mary Phillips, and Mary is the chairperson, president of the ARC of Nebraska. She's also been a long-term special educator and for several years an administrator, helping with transitions and other services. Mary has promoted significantly support decision-making in Nebraska, and that's why we have her. We're going to hear back much more from Michael following this, but I want to give Mary an opportunity for you to hear some of the things that advocacy groups have been doing in Nebraska to bring about support decision-making, and specifically what Mary's done for her own family member, her daughter, to be providing and building a circle and support decision making. So with all that, Mary, I turn it over to you. Mary, you're on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and asking me to speak today and to share Erin's story. And I wish Erin were here, but Erin is at work this morning, and she has been employed for going on 13 years with the same store, and we don't mess with that. So she couldn't be here on a Thursday morning, but I have her full permission to share her story, and we have certainly been strong advocates for Erin to be as independent as possible. So as Dr. Friedman said, I am a long-term special educator, so I'm going to interpret that as retired. I did retire this past year from full-time special ed director for a local educational service unit in Nebraska. And prior to that, I worked for a fairly large school district as a special ed administrator for 16 years and a special ed teacher for 9 years before that even. So, and by the way, if you add up all of those years of my working in public schools, they do equal the same age as Erin. So she was the reason that I left social work and went into special education. She was born with cerebral palsy. We are parents of 3 adult children. Erin is our youngest. She has an older brother and an older sister. And we we are very involved with her. All of our family is very involved in supporting Erin. As a special educator myself, I know that I probably frequently advise parents when I felt like their children were going to need supports out of high school in the form of guardianship, because that is all we knew. We didn't know about other options in this state. And so as Erin was reaching age of majority, it was time for us to make decisions. And we were on our way to guardianship. We were several $100s invested into it with a very competent attorney who we valued her opinion quite a bit. But we learned then that there were other options available to us through, actually, we learned it through Disability Rights Nebraska, attending a transition workshop that they were speaking at. And so we stopped the process and we started developing tools to help us. And now 13 years down the road, we're excited to know it has a name, supported decision making. We didn't know it had a name, but we started working on the model of supported decision making followed our lifelong quest to normalize Erin's life experience, to help her. I think one of the slides I really like that routinize her life experience. I like that frame of thinking. We have been those parents all through school that we didn't know what Erin would learn, but we knew she wouldn't learn it if she wasn't in the general ed environment. So we wanted her in general ed classrooms with accommodations and modifications, and we wanted her exposed to typically developing peers all the time. We wanted her to have a high comfort level with folks, even though we knew she needed some specialized supports and services. And so all of that falls right into the model that you're learning about and that we live. So our thought was always, how are we going to get Erin set up for life? How are we going to help her when we're no longer here to help her? That was always the drive behind us helping Erin with her decision-making process. And one of the tools that we have found to be most invaluable for Erin is a power of attorney medical and a power of attorney durable. And that has helped us support her through various surgeries, any medical evaluation or just routine visit, dental or medical. They always ask for power of attorney. Everyone always assumes Erin has a guardian. They ask her, who's your guardian? And she's very proud to say, I'm my own guardian. She is proud of that, and she should be proud of that. And so we always, of course, have to present some of the documents that are necessary. And we always have her sign a medical release, their form. And she's always very comfortable doing that because in her circle, she trusts the circle that she's built. And so you can kind of see in this handout that our power of attorney is both with her father and I, and we also have a backup plan in the event something were to happen to us with her adult siblings. I serve as her representative payee for SSI, and so we have a joint checking account, which one must have when you're a representative payee for SSI. It works perfectly for us that we both can help her make decisions that way. And So we are able to help her with pretty much any type of decision she needs to make, whether it be where she lives. She doesn't live with us. She lives in an extended family home, and she was part of that interviewing process and to find the right match for her from start to finish. She, as I mentioned before, she does work and she works in the same grocery store chain. All these years she's been there. So she has a job coach that's part of her vocational circle of support and the natural supports in any business. So her bakery manager or the floral department manager or the store manager, they all give her feedback. She listens, she adjusts, she asks questions of them. She feels very confident going to them with questions. And she also is very still connected to us as her family members. And we give her really good, authentic feedback. Erin has had lots of other types of job experiences that have been super helpful for her, growing her to be independent. She had the opportunity to work with People First of Nebraska. And I say that in past tense. She still is very involved with People First of Nebraska. But she was a disability policy advocate, I believe was the term. And so in that role, she was able to research the impact that legislation would have on individuals with disabilities and share her research either in favor or in opposition to various bills that are being addressed. So if you'll indulge me for just a second, I want to share Erin with you. Do I have the ability to share my screen? Can I share screens? I think you just gave that to me, didn't you? I would like to just share screen since she can't be here. One participant at a time can share the screen. So I am going to try to share, and I think you can see that now, right? Can you see my picture of Erin there?
Now we can see it, Mary.
Awesome. I just want you to see who I'm talking about. So in the center of that picture is Erin with her 2 extended family home providers. And then you see her working in the grocery store, and she just happens to have the 2 most adorable twin grandgirls ever, but her nieces were visiting her that day. She sat at various booths representing People First in Nebraska at job fairs and at transition fairs and at conferences, wherever we can get a place. There's a picture of her giving testimony at the legislature, and believe that presentation there was at a different People First chapter when she was talking about independence there. But I just want to share, Erin's also been very awarded for her efforts. So she's reinforced to make decisions and building that capacity to make better decisions. It does build on herself. And she's very proud every time that she does win an award, and it's displayed proudly in a prominent location. And we're proud of her because Erin is a success story in and of herself. Either in Special Olympics, she has shown ridden equitherapy and shown equine for many years. She bowls for Special Olympics. She loves to travel. She's been on ARC of Lincoln chapter ARC trips in various places. She has tried to have the life that we all would want to have for our children. But Erin is developmentally disabled. She has an intellectual disability. She has a medical disability with cerebral palsy. She has had multiple spinal and facial surgeries, opening airways, opening lung capacity, straightening her spine. All of those have happened. And all of those things are still there. That means she still needs support. And that's why we are wanting to give her these supports and teach her the capacity to make decisions with using the circle of supports that she has built for herself. And so similar to the slide that Dr. Friedman shared, you can see her informal circles are vary based on where she needs the support. And especially in the social area, because if she is in her day program, she may not want to do the community inclusion activity that they have planned, and she doesn't have to. But she verbalizes to them, I'd rather work on this craft. I'd rather go there. And they're very responsive because she's learned how to share what her needs are. She sings in a choir, and the choir director gives her lots of good supports. People first in Nebraska, her coaches, her friends, families, our neighbors. She's surrounded by lots and lots of different folks who support her in all of those kinds of decisions she has to make for each of those areas of her life. So I also wanted to share, I know I don't have a lot of time, just another couple minutes. I wanted to say to all of you who are listening here today, you are conveyors of information, just as I was when I was a special ed secondary teacher and a special ed director working with all students from birth to 21, Nebraska being a birth mandate state. And we're conveyors, we're educators, we're all educators of sharing with parents. You have options. It's not just guardianship. And not every individual, not every option fits every individual. But so you have to think about what will work in your situation, where Erin is very much willing to visit with us and talk to us about all of her needs. Circle of support works very well in our family and how it works for Erin. She listens to her coaches with People First and with work and at her day programs and in her social activities. And so I was very happy to be able to share our story, and I'm very happy to answer any questions, if there are any.
Can I ask? Okay, I don't know if you know Carol Minert. I don't know if you knew her, or I don't know. I went to a small town school, Taylor, and I had a special ed teacher that really helped me get through school. So
important to have those individuals that support us and teach us and build our capacity to help us be better and live more independently and a more self-determined life.
Thank you, Mary. We're about to go to our second discussion breakout room, but if there are any other question anybody wants to raise, please just unmute yourself and speak up.
Mary, I heard you say a couple times.
Please say who you are.
Oh, my name is Michelle Zephyr, and I'm a parent of a child who's 14, has Down syndrome.
Hi,
And
Michelle.
Hi, I'm also a UCID trainee out of UNMC. But I heard you say several times she listens. And I really appreciate that, because that makes her such an active participant. Does that help when you're advocating? I guess I can't help but think how useful that very sentence might be in advocating. Do you have anything to say about that?
Let me clarify. Erin does listen very well. That does not mean Erin agrees. And she is allowed to sometimes make a decision that we don't think maybe is the best choice for her, but there's no harm in it. She's not going to get hurt by it. We believe she learns from making mistakes, as we all learn from making mistakes. So even if she has her mindset that let's say she wants to purchase a high ticket thing, and she knows it's not probably the most financially smart thing for her to do, but she wants this thing really badly and she can afford it, she might buy it and then later realize, yeah, I shouldn't have spent that much. She gets it. So we all learn from our mistakes. So even though she listens and she'll consult with us and we give her feedback, doesn't necessarily mean always agreement. You just have to, that goes along with it. And we're not her guardian. She does ultimately get to make the final choice on things. And we can influence them to a certain extent by asking her follow really good questions of, well, how will that help you? Or what do you need from that? Or what, those kinds of things to have her take pause and think about how it will benefit her or not.
Thank you,
This is-
Michelle.
This
Anybody
is
else have a
Jennifer
question?
James, and I just want to say it's been a real treat knowing you and Erin for as long as my family has known you. We've learned a lot that maybe we wouldn't have known if we hadn't met you and Erin.
Thank you, Jenny James. And you have continued to be a positive influence for Erin and a role model on your independent living, which is her life goal to finally move out of EFH. And we want her to get there.
Thank you, Jen. with that, we're going to go back. We're going to go next to our second discussion room. And as you can see on screen, and following that, we're going to hear back from Michael Kendrick on kind of phase 2 of support decision making. So the breakout room, again, will be 12 minutes. We're going to ask again, people unmute your or on your webcams, restart your webcam so that we can see you and talk to you, particularly in the small groups. Everybody wants to meet each other. So the question is, what type of personal support with your personal decisions do you welcome? And what kinds of supports would you be unwelcome or unhelpful? So what supports or things that you want to have, and what supports would you prefer not to have? Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had as great time as I did, and the discussion groups were as productive, and we're delighted. It takes a couple minutes to get everybody back into our room, and we'll just give everybody just a few minutes. We have almost everybody yet. In a moment, we're going to hear from Michael. So with that, let me express appreciation for all the discussion groups, and we're going to go with Michael for the sort of phase 2 of support decision making. Michael, you're on.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. There's a couple of just points I'd like to make. A lot of you may be very interested in support decision making and would like to learn some more. And the Center for Public Representation has a quite good website on supported decision making, and you may want to go have a look at it. It also has links to other websites and other resources. And depending on your interests, there's quite a bit of material available, both from that website as well as from others. So the link to that is just www.supporteddecisions.org, or you could just go to the Center for Public Representation as well if you didn't get time to write that down. Now, for the slides that I used, I'm not sure what the arrangement is, but I'm quite happy to have them shared with people. If they're not shared through this mechanism, just contact me directly and I'll send them back to you by email. So feel free to do that. And also, there may be questions that occurred to you later than today as you think about things, and feel free to get back in touch with me. And again, I'll give you my email address that I use the most, and just get in touch. I'm quite happy to get back to people, and usually pretty prompt, actually. So my email address is kendrickconsult@icloud.com. And if you do get copies of the slides, it'll be on the first slide, that information, the email address. So do get in touch, even if it's months or years from now. If I can help, I'm quite happy to do so. So just don't think you're bothering me. That's why I'm here, to be helpful. So let me be helpful. Now, just to finish up, supported decision-making is spreading quite widely, not just in the US, but in many countries. And so what we covered today was really just a bit more the American scene rather than the international scene. But if you're interested, you'll find that there's quite a bit of activity in all kinds of different countries and in all kinds of different languages, depending on which languages you use. So I wouldn't want to create the impression we're the only people interested in this. This goes back to the UN Convention and the fact that there are people all over the world very interested in ensuring that people with disabilities have a voice, and that voice be respected. So there are many resources outside the US as well as inside that you may find as you look around a bit. Now, for those of you that are involved in guardianship, I don't want to leave you with the sense that you should be criticized in any way if you've made that choice. Our intention here is not to criticize people that have made a choice for guardianship, but rather to hold open the possibility that there are some options. And if you get to a point where you do change your mind about guardianship, it is good to know that you can get it reversed and you can put in place other options. Many families actually practice supported decision-making while still holding on to guardianship. So it's not that one drives out the other. So you're not forfeiting guardianship by practicing supported decision-making, but you may be providing your family member or the person that you're concerned with a lot more autonomy and rights than if they stay under guardianship. So it's good just to have knowledge of that option. And there would be people a bit like Mary that can tell the story of how they've managed without guardianship. And that wouldn't be just one story. There would be tens of thousands of families who have made that decision. So it's just good to know that they're there as a resource to you as you try to work your way through these complicated issues. And I'll just leave it at that. Stay on time here.
Thank you, Michael. We really appreciate all that you've, your wisdom that you provided us and helped us to think about all of these really, really important issues that are before us and that people are thinking about and how to think about next steps that they might take. Nebraska is engaged from several advocacy groups, very significantly in pondering supported decision-making, how to bring about perhaps a law or regulation, and how to promote it in Nebraska to bring more people the opportunities. With that, I have a few of the things that I want to cover. Firstly, I really want to thank you, Michael, for giving us your wisdom, your knowledge. Michael, I've been friends for decades, and I really appreciate your time and expertise of being with us. I want to cover a few things, and I want to give Kristen Lawson, who is the Executive Director at DD Council, a moment. I'm going to bring her on screen and have her give her a shout out. So I'm giving her a moment of that. Next up, next steps. Next we'll have next week the Discovering Customized Employment by Ruth and Marie Beckwith, who is my partner and wife, will be providing, and is really looking at the uniqueness of helping people with more significant disabilities who almost always are thought of that they couldn't have a job. So often the thought around employment is, sure, somebody who's being a greeter at Walmart, they can do that. Janet could do that, Jennifer could do that. But two things to think about. One, at one time we thought none of those people could do a job, and now we think so. And secondly, that we've found that thousands of people with some of the most significant disabilities that you'll hear about and learn from. And Ruthie's provided employment training for people in almost 10 states around the country. Secondly, in 2022, will be Self-Advocates Leading Your Own Meeting, again by Ruth and Marie, is really looking at how both people themselves and you as ally supporters can help people to lead their own meeting. So we welcome you to that. Next is Person-Centered Planning Champions. We have 160 people who signed up to be Person-Centered Planning Champions, which is to further supported decision, for person-centered planning in Nebraska. Anybody's interested in doing that, we're going to hold meetings monthly. We've had almost 5 of them now. Just put your name and email in the chat box. We'll add you to our list. We'll be having our next meeting in January, and just a way to learn. The department's made a commitment to this. We'll be having training and whatnot, but this is really what people have asked for, and we'll be starting as a study group. It's really a self-study group that people will come together and really work on how people can share and learn from each other about how to move forward on person-centered planning, and particularly the Charting Your Life course. We developed a number of success stories. Mary Angus, who many of you met in some of the breakout rooms, is writing them. And we ask any success stories that you have around people being successful, just send me their name Mary write the stories. You really don't have to do anything. It's just connecting up with people who might want to share their story. We're working on one for Janet Tibbs right now. As we close, we have 10 webinars that we did in year one of the training, and they continue to get almost 100 people watching them a month. They are exceptional. You see David Weatherow is one of our co-hosts today. All of these people have done extraordinary work in person-centered planning, in writing the books, in planning the efforts and doing the training. Almost all of them have been in Nebraska at one time or another. And I also commend to you on the left, Shelley Turner. And Shelley is the founder, creator, designer, founder, and continues to be in charge of charting a life course at the University of Kansas. And there's a webinar. So if you want a quick and easy way to learn about charting the life course, there's an hour webinar on the department's website, person-centered planning website, which we'll put a link in the chat box for you right now. Just a couple other things. If you follow us on Facebook, that will help us spread the word to other people who may not have heard of this yet and would benefit from learning, about person-centered planning and some of the things that we'll be doing in the future. We have a whole nother round of training that we'll be doing in January for families and providers and people with disabilities. 4 sessions starting January 6th. Just a piece that we put a number of links in the chat box. And if you want to hit on the small 3 knobs, little dots in the chat box, you can save all of that. And then finally, in closing, if you fill out the survey link, and we have a SurveyMonkey link, and the training is funded by the state, but also the federal government, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare. And they like to know what people think about. And so your comments are really helpful to further the development of person-centered planning. So we really would appreciate, the link for that is in the chat box, and we'd really appreciate if you added that there. With that, we're going to close. We're a few minutes early. We really appreciate you coming and being with us. We thank Michael Kendrick again deeply for spending his time with us. I'm going to bring Kristen on screen, if we can get Kristen up here, just to do a connection from the Nebraska Council of Developmental Disabilities, our funder. And Kristen, if you just add a few, whatever comments you might like to make.
Thank you, Mark. It was a real pleasure being able to sit in today and listen to Michael's presentation and to hear Mary Phillips visit. If you're not familiar with the council, there's a council in every state and territory in the nation. We're federally funded through the Administration for Community Living, and we're really mandated to engage in advocacy, capacity building, and systemic change efforts. And we work collaboratively with other disability partners in our state. So I'm glad that you alluded to the efforts that we are in exploring supported decision making as a platform to come to the state of Nebraska. Disability Rights Nebraska is taking the lead on that project. And so if you want to learn more about that, please contact them. But we're pleased to be part of the steering committee, and they're launching a task force effort. We're also getting some national technical assistance from Jonathan Martinez, who's very well versed in supported decision making. So it's moving in that direction, folks, and it's a great thing to happen. Also wanted to mention that we have a new state plan, and our state plan has things like employment and making sure that we're promoting competitive integrated employment. So I'm so glad to hear that the next session will be focused on employment. So much of person-centered planning really does envelop some of our other goals and areas. And so we're doing lots of exciting projects, but we are most proud of the person-centered planning training that you've been doing, Mark, with your colleagues. And we are thrilled that the state is selected charting the life course as a module to continue building on this effort. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or visit our website. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And I just want to close on behalf of myself, Michael Kendrick, Mary Angus, David Weatherow, and Formeller, and Jennifer James, who's with us and will be a trainer in the future trainings. We thank you for coming and participating with us, and we hope you have a great day, and we'll see you in the future next week, we hope, on customized employment. See everybody next time. Bye-bye, everybody.